Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that first half. That was really nice discussion. I really enjoyed seeing everybody interact. And Michelle did such a great job as always. She's great. And now we have the other half of the Serapina show. And Dr. Vic Serapina, many of you know. I didn't want to. I have a slide with him, but I don't want to change that. I like that. And there is in your handout a short bio on him in terms of what he's done here within the Department of Family Medicine for many years, and as our guru for alternative medicine and holistic healing. And the only other thing I wanted to mention that I forgot is that we are videotaping these lectures, this whole series, starting back in June. And we have them on DVDs and VHS in our library. We are sending them to the libraries at all our remote sites. We have numerous copies available. If you or any of your friends feel that they want to obtain one of these, take a look at it, we'd be happy to lend it to you, and just let me know whenever you'd like to get these later on. And we have a whole series, any of the lectures that you see on those topics we have available for you. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up Dr. Vic Serapina.
Hi everybody, happy holidays. Our nurses were wearing these in the clinic today, and I wanted one. It makes up for my lack of hair. And the patients liked them. Well, thanks Tony for inviting me, and thank you all for attending. My wife and I started talking about this area of healthy aging and doing some publishing about it a few years ago. And it's really been kind of a nice pairing, because we look at the psycho-spiritual dimensions of aging, and as well as kind of the physical side of it. I don't really like the term anti-aging. I feel like that's an unhealthy attitude. But there is a lot of that. People really want to get into this anti-aging thing, so I'm going to break down a couple of myths about that today. And feel free to ask questions anytime during my presentation, but what I'm going to really talk about more, now that Michelle's developed the kind of psycho-spiritual dimension, is more the physical side of health and healing that has some evidence behind it, and some things that you may want to incorporate, and may in fact already incorporate into your practice with the elderly. Dr. Bernard Lound, could I get a glass of water? Who is a Nobel Prize winner in cardiology, thank you, had this to say about medicine and caring. Caring without science is well-intentioned kindness, but not medicine. On the other hand, science without caring empties the medicine of healing and negates the great potential of an ancient profession. The two complement each other and are essential to the art of doctoring. Now, he's an MD, and I think every place where it says medicine, you could say nursing, you could say social work or other kinds of healthcare providing. But the point that he makes is that we come to this work because we care about people. And it is our work because of our special knowledge, which is information. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. But I want to keep in mind that my perspective, as Kay brought up and Michelle talked about, that really what makes our work holistic, what makes our work healing in true capacity, is staying focused on the therapeutic relationship and keeping the patient at the center of our equation. Their purpose, their meaning, their values, all of these are as important as often what we do to them or for them. So this is about strategies for optimal living. I was invited to put this together for a very interesting talk that it was a week-long workshop in Kauai last month that the Scripps Integrative Medicine Center from La Jolla put together. And they call it Destination Health, Renewing Mind, Body, and Spirit. And although there were some physicians and nurses, other healthcare providers there, primarily these were their patients. Thank you very much. And so this was an opportunity. Over a week we did experiential workshops and lots of yoga and Tai Chi and water exercises. We had wonderful food, we had wonderful speakers, And this was kind of our piece of it. Michelle and I did talks and workshops, and it was very well received. We receive support for our work through the National Institutes of Health, National Center for Complementary Medicine, and the National Institute for Aging. We just got a new grant on mind-body medicine, psychoneuroimmunology, stress, and healthy aging in Hispanics that we're collaborating heavily with the geriatric division to work on. So what does the face of healthy aging look like? Well, I took the liberty to ask Marilyn Broadwick, who works among you, as you all probably know, a wonderful photographer, and she just has taken pictures. She's got a whole book called The Faces of Aging. And I think this is a way to kind of address negative attitudes about aging. So here's a lady who's a race walker. Looks like she's probably in her 70s. This gentleman's got his pacemaker, and he's a competitive swimmer. See this thing here? His pacemaker pocket right there. Looks pretty happy. 1977 National Senior. I've got a friend of mine who's in his late 60s, and he does triathlons. And he always says, I'm the best in my class. Okay? When we lived in Colorado, there was I was a ski patrol director at Wolf Creek, and there was one guy that was about this age, and he always won the downhill skiing competition because he was like 78 and nobody else competed against him. He said, I'm the best in my class. I got my medals for years in a row. So I think what happens sometimes is we underestimate the possibilities for seniors, and in so doing tend to marginate them. And instead of doing, as Michelle was encouraging, more social activity, more creative activity, we say, well, you know, your best years are behind you, so just forget about it and just, you know, kind of totter off. And that's the worst attitude to give. And people in this age group, as you all know, have such a rich realm of experience that we can do, they can contribute still to the world. And as healthcare providers, our goal is really to assist them in that and encourage them, be their cheerleaders, their coaches, their guides, and not simply to medicalize them. Here's a lady who really likes her birds. A bird feeder in MacArthur Park. And she's younger, she's older. I don't know if Michelle mentioned this wonderful program called Visible Lives, you mentioned? It's a new program that has been used at a number of nursing homes and such, where people create storyboards of their lives. So this just reminded me of it. Here's this lady when she was younger. Rather than a person in a residential setting just being seen as, you know, this older person over there named Mary or whatever, they encourage them and their family to work together and put a storyboard together. So it might be a big kind of poster or one of those collage type of photograph things. And they put pictures from different eras in their life. Maybe when they graduated from high school or nursing school, or maybe when they were having kids. And so suddenly, this person is not just who you're seeing, this little blue-haired lady in front of you that's kind of a little decrepit, but she's got this, I'm not looking at you, Helen's getting nervous. You're looking good, Helen. But has this whole story behind them, this legend. And what it has done is it's created a deeper relationship with the providers and the patients or clients. I know Diane Helliker in our School of Nursing is doing research about this, and they have story sharing between the providers and new admissions to assisted living and nursing homes. So it kind of is a verbal way of doing that. But the Visible Lives, very simple to do. In fact, Michelle just created a training video on that that'll be available fairly soon through Geriatrics or the Academy of Lifelong Learning. So what are the key elements of optimal living? We wrote an article a couple years ago that looked at this and kind of studied it and thought about it. And the tendency is to kind of get too big. You know, there's like all this lists and lists of things that you can do. And I'll give you some lists of practical things. But when I really thought about it, there's four components. One is moving. One is eating and drinking. loving, and being creative. If you think about that, what are some of the key aspects you'd like everybody to do that comes into your practice? You'd like them to be physically active. You'd like to encourage them to walk, to move, to be active. Eating, clearly our nutrition. Somebody mentioned Adele Davis. I was raised on Adele Davis. That's probably how I turned out the way I am. But this whole concept of healthy nutrition as essential to positive life throughout, and also just the celebration of food and the enjoyment and the ritual of it. I'll show you a book later that strikes at the roots of medical terrorism about food, called Superfoods, and I recommend that you get it. And drinking. So I don't recommend to a lot of our Baptists around here drinking. If they don't, the Episcopalians don't have to worry about. But there's really fairly good literature about alcohol as a benefit, and traditionally it has been. So it's kind of one of those things that has a U-shaped curve. So patients that have no alcohol intake have actually a higher morbidity than those that drink between 2 and 3 drinks a day, somewhere in that range. So, and then it starts to go up again. The morbidity goes up when you get above 4 drinks a day. So this was published in the New England Journal in January of 2003, and it didn't seem to be just wine. Everybody's heard about red wine, it's so good for you. Just was any kind of alcohol, beer, liquor, whatever. But there's something, probably an antiplatelet effect, an anti-inflammatory effect. So moderation in eating and drinking are key. And I'm not going to talk too much about love and creation because I think Michelle's done that adequately. But just to re-emphasize the power of relationship, the power of connection, and the power of meaning and purpose as expressed through, no matter what stage you're in life, to still have some creative outlet, something that makes you feel good. Like this lady, she's doing the senior shot put event. I want to have all my patients look like that. I bet she doesn't have an osteoporotic bone in her body, carrying those heavy weights around like that. So indeed, these end up being what I would consider the cornerstones of this evolving field of biogerontology. Physical activity, nutrition, social connection, and the sense of meaning and purpose. And it's working for all of us right now. I intend to live forever. So far, so good. I mean, who's to tell what it's going to turn out? Now, we were at a conference in Albuquerque just in October, and I had a chance to spend some quality time with my friend and colleague, Dr. Andrew Weil, and he gave a lecture on a book that he's got coming out on aging. It's coming out in March, and it's going to actually be a very nice book. Andy's a very good writer, very sensible in a lot of ways, and he says, okay, let's look at the myths about aging. Well, here's one that he talked about, the Methuselah myth, that people in the Bible lived to 900 years old. It's right there in the Bible. It's like Moses and all these people. And the idea that somehow that in the ancient era, people really did live longer. And although that may have been metaphorically true, maybe it's literally true, there's actually no great anthropological or scientific support to the fact that there have ever been really long living people, groups of people in society. The usual natural lifespan of the human being is probably underestimated, but maybe it's 120 years old. But Methuselah was, I think, like 900 years old, and Moses got to be up in those ages. So this is one of the myths that somehow there was a time and an era when people lived to very long. There doesn't seem to be any scientific evidence for it. And of course there's a kind of the Shangri-La. There's a special place where you go to live up in the high Carpathian Mountains or the Himalayas. Actually, there is some evidence about people in Okinawa, and I'll just share that with you briefly, because Okinawa has the largest percentage of centenarians of any place in the world. And we'll look at some of the characteristics of that. But by and large, when many of these claims of these places where people lived 120, 150 years old were really investigated, the birth records could never be validated, and in that society, and maybe they were very old people, but they were validated for being old. So they, instead of us saying, well, I'm still 39, hello, oh, I'm 139, and that actually gave them position power in their society. So it's not clear that there's really any special place to live longer. Oops. This mic is not amplifying my voice.
It's only for the recording.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Then this is kind of our current touchstone, is the Ponce de Leon myth, or the fountain of youth. That only if we take the right supplement or the right hormone, or we find some special drug, that we'll be able to live forever, or at least almost forever. And this is where the Anti-Aging Society of America is a group now called the 4A's or something, Anti-Aging Association of America, has really made a lot of impact. People really believe that there's out there someplace, some hope. And they actually propose, in my view, dangerous things such as human growth hormone and high doses of other kinds of hormones and medications that have not been proven to be safe for long-term effectiveness. And they may get some increased muscle mass, but we don't know the cost down the road. Now in Okinawa, where people live to over 100, there seems to be some factors here that are interesting. First of all, the Okinawans don't seem to really be Japanese. If you look at their genetics, they seem perhaps to have come from Southeast Asia, Vietnam or someplace like that. I don't know what difference that makes. They actually eat a lot of pork, but they simmer it for hours so there's no fat in it. They have very low sodium in their diet. And jasmine tea, which we know has an anti-inflammatory effect, an anti-cancer effect, and lots of fruits and vegetables. Now this is a theme you're going to hear me talk about a lot, this fruit and vegetables piece. Now how do you eat fruits and vegetables if you don't have any teeth, okay, as many of our elders do? And there are ways around that in terms of cooking, in terms of making smoothies and juices and juicing, etc. Bitter melon is something they incorporate in their diet. And this is a traditional Ayurvedic recipe for reducing blood sugars. They call bitter melon the sugar buster, or the destroyer of sweetness in Indian medicine. And it's clear that having lower blood sugar is helpful for longevity. Turmeric tea, again, another from the Indian subcontinent, another product that's active with curcumin in it. It's an anti-inflammatory and anti-tumor. We'll even use it here for patients with arthritis as an alternative to some of the anti-inflammatories. Clean air and water. There's a group called the Coalition for a Healthy Environment, made of physicians and other healthcare providers, that is taking this on directly and saying, you know, for many years the hospitals were the greatest polluters in the community. All the mercury that we put out from the sphygmomanometers and the other kinds of industrial waste. But it's very clear to us every day as health providers that pollution of air and water is a negative impact on our patients. Toxicological exposures. And this community for the healthy environment that is run out of San Francisco by Dr. Michael Lerner says we need to actually be more activists in the environmental medicine dimension. It makes as big a difference in our patients' health. And as a family doctor, I think I'm very sensitive to this in the care of pediatrics, because children are much more prone to exposures of toxic products. Their body size, the amount of tissue that they have compared to their body weight, so forth, actually accelerates any toxic exposures they have. So lead toxicity is an obvious one. One of the other pieces here that's fascinating in Okinawa is the cultural value of old people as living treasures. And this is a value that in many ways in our society has been lost, and they've been seen as kind of living burdens. And if you talk to your seniors, I'm sure you know this is the last thing they'd want to be. They don't want to be a burden. They don't actually care so much about pain and suffering for themselves, but they just don't want to be a burden on their family. Well, in Okinawa, they're kind of revered as living treasures, and the grandkids will fight over and argue who's going to be able to have the honor to take care of the 105-year-old when he or she gets sick. So that it's a whole different shift in values. Now think about how that would feel to you as a 95 or 100-year-old person in our society, where you might be kind of marginated from your family and community, as opposed to being embraced and encouraged and taken out for every social event and every community activity. And they stay physically active. They garden, they walk. So these are all variables that probably are not limited to Okinawa. Deepak Chopra wrote a book a few years back called Ageless Mind, Timeless Body, and he also tried to investigate what the factors were. Were there any common factors for people who lived to be 100 or so? And these things came up, but he said other things that came up were kind of attitudinal. They tended to be people that didn't carry a grudge, a la the discussion about forgiveness. Didn't let things kind of bother them, didn't let things kind of simmer. They tended not to be too fat, but they tended not to be too skinny either. They're somewhere in between, and they didn't, over their life, have a lot of this kind of fluctuation of their weight. They rarely smoked, okay? If they took alcohol at all, it was very moderate. But there wasn't any kind of like overwhelming difference in them. And I'm sure you've seen patients over the years that are very old, and you ask them, what's your secret? And they always tell you something different. I remember a 97-year-old I took care of when I was a resident, healthy as could be. Eventually developed bladder cancer and died from that. But I said, what's your secret? Because he was very sharp mentally. He said, I keep my beer behind the water radiator instead of in the refrigerator. And so he never drank cold beer. Now in Chicago, you know, beer is like the national drink there, especially among the Bohemians, which is the community I was practicing in. But he just said that was his thing. And I don't know, he did drink a 6-pack a day, but whenever he drank beer, it was warm. That was his secret. I don't think he drank it all at one time, but they all tell you something different. But often it comes back to this sense of connectedness with their family, with their community of faith, and some sense of meaning and purpose for what they're doing. Something to get up for every morning. On the other hand, you know you're getting old when you stoop to tie your shoes and wonder what else you can do while you're down there. Okay. So what are goals of optimum aging? We talk about this, we kind of know about it, but really think about what it is. What we'd like to do is arrive at advanced age more or less intact. And I heard Kenneth Cooper from the Cooper Clinic in Dallas giving a talk. I was in Maui at the time, and he was talking just before I did. And he talked about this rectangularization of the morbidity curve. So instead of having a lifespan that is like we hit a certain point and we have a gradual, slow decline over a number of years, he said, let's rectangularize that. Let's try to keep patients optimally functioning as long as possible, and then when they have their decline, it's relatively rapid and short. So we don't have patients who are disabled for long periods of time by stroke, by dementia, by arthritis, whatever, but you try and keep the rectangularization of that curve as a point. People are going to die, but shortening the time of disability is clearly a goal of optimal aging. And this concept of adapting mindfully and gracefully to changes in the body and function, this is something I haven't grasped yet. For myself, I'm in my mid-50s, and I still in my mind am 25. I try to play racquetball and I like this stuff, but it's taking me some discipline of mind to say, geez, you know, I'm 55, maybe I don't need to do the same kinds of things, or my expectations about my activities can be different. And that's in the face of a youth-oriented culture in the United States, where we tend to kind of glorify youth and marginate seniors. Say the ideal body structure is to look like one of these supermodel guys or girls, and when you're older, you just don't look like that. So you look in the mirror and go, well, that's not me. In my dreams, maybe. But the idea that there is beauty in the aging body, which is something that Marilyn did with her photography series. I think that was very nice for that. Obviously, you'd like to have enough energy and activity to be able to do the things you want to do. My dad is 88 years old. He's very active, grows his own garden, chops his own firewood. I don't know how much they need firewood in Phoenix, but he chops it anyways, and it keeps him busy. And he walks every day in the mall. And so I'm just so happy because he does have the energy just to keep going and being able to do things. He's tapering off a little with time, and he's not happy with any changes in that direction, but he's still able at 88 to maintain an active life and enjoy things day to day, hour to hour, looking forward to what's happening. I mean, I never cease to be amazed every time I call him, which is probably pretty much every day. He just tells me what he had for breakfast and who he met with and what lunch he has planned and how he's making all these pierogies for Polish Christmas. He's made 75 of them. And so he tends to live, as I think many healthy elderly people do, from an activity to another, from a celebration to another. And this is why we see a lot of loss of vitality around the holidays. It's kind of like, well, you hit that milestone or that birthday and you give up. But the idea of just being able to enjoy the details of life. And I think that was one of the things that Chopra's book, Ageless Mind, Timeless Body, looked at, is that people tended to be satisfied and even got great enjoyment out of just day-to-day activities. And this whole concept of connectivity, and one of the references is the Alameda study, which was done in California some years back, and over a 14-year period, and found that patients or people that really had good social relationships clearly had extended longevity, decrease in all-cause morbidity. And it didn't necessarily have to be a church community, and it didn't even have to be a family community. It could be a social club, and maybe they played cards, or they were in a bicycling club or something like that, but that whole concept of connectivity. So wellness and integrative methods, we stress these particular aspects: diet and lifestyle, herbs and supplements, mind-body therapies, and this evolving area that was popularized by my colleague in Tucson, Dharma Singh Khalsa, of brain longevity. What good is arriving there with the body intact if you can't enjoy conversation, you don't really remember things very well, you can't read, you can't understand what's going on. And his concept of brain longevity is kind of correlated with cardiac longevity. Brain longevity is often paralleled with vascular health, and so if you take good care of your heart and your blood vessels, you get good blood flow to the brain, you can minimize inflammation and decrease damage that way. So there's a number of different methods for that. Now, of course, conventional medical practice, which we participate in, is to minimize the impact of chronic diseases, prolong life, and this is not always the best solution in a patient's life. We had grand rounds yesterday in family medicine, or resident rounds, where we talked about a woman who had advanced colon cancer. And she was happy with not treating it, and her prognosis was 6 months or so, which she's already exceeded. But her prognosis with major surgery and another round of significant chemotherapy, all of which was going to make her fairly weak, disabled with side effects, was at the most 2 years. So she decided that prolonged life wasn't her option, it was quality of life. And often this is one of the challenges that we have in our training with residents, medical students and such, and even fellows, is say, let's really look at the quality of people's life. Prolonging life for the simple sake of prolonging it isn't always the best goal. And this gets back to what Kay and Helen were bringing up before about the spirituality dimensions. Often it's so important to understand patients' view of end of life. If in your view, in your religious tradition, that end of life is really a bad thing, it's the end of life, and it's, gone, then you hang on to every toenail and fingernail. If, on the other hand, it's part of a natural process, you see it in your spiritual tradition as a certain kind of culmination that can be entered into peacefully and with grace, and dignity, then that affects these end-of-life choices. So of course we want to improve the quality of physical functioning, and this is an area where I try to emphasize for my patients what you can do, not what you can't do. And not try and push them beyond their capacity, but to emphasize all of the wonderful types of activities like Michelle was saying that we have here even at UTMB for seniors. And of course we target chronic diseases, most common ones listed here: high blood pressure, diabetes, coronary artery disease, lipid disorders, osteoporosis, and avoiding frailty, as well as dementia, of course, but we can't do as much about that as we can for some of these. And it's important to maintain immunizations and screening tests, proper weight, blood pressure, etc. This is kind of standard medical approach. But also, on the right-hand side is the idea of constructive and proactive exercise and dietary programs, helping people deal with some of these attitudes about aging, their expectations. I'm always stunned and to some degree disheartened by patients who say, you know, I'm getting older, I can't expect too much of myself anymore. And that's not aging gracefully, that's kind of giving up. And I've got people that are in their 40s that are doing this, you know. I'm going, what is with this? But that kind of attitude engenders the exact kind of downslope that people kind of expect sometimes. They just stop doing things. And the whole concepts of relaxation or stress management, which is in the mind-body realm, is very well evidenced. In fact, there's a recent article on how DNA structure, the telomere length, is shortened in mothers of chronically ill children because of the chronic stress. So that's something that can be alleviated by a number of mind-body and relaxation therapies. Here's Dr. Unnatural. Are you eating properly and getting plenty of exercise? Did I do something? Okay. This is one of the things that we've done for several years with our medical students is to help them develop a self-care plan. And this has been interesting to them because, first of all, it makes them realize how difficult it is to do one change in your life. And typically when a patient walks out of our office, we've given them 5 or 6 things. I want you to quit smoking, lose about 20 pounds, start exercising even though you haven't, change your diet in this way, and take these pills. And by the way, come back and see me in a month and I want it all done. Well, we have them come up with a balanced self-care plan that's physical health, emotional health, relational health, nutritional, spiritual dimensions, and look at what they'd like to do. Because students are often afraid when they go into residency and internship that they're going to have a very stressful time and they're going to even neglect their self-care worse than they did in medical school. We've surveyed medical students for the last 4 years. In the second year, they have very unhealthy habits. They eat about 1 to 3 fruits and vegetables a day. Some of them even eat less than that, if you can imagine. Often I think the vegetables are on pizza. And the exercise, about 60% of them get little or no exercise compared to the recommendations. These are students, medical students, and they say, I don't have time, but they're going to tell their patients what to do, right? So this creates a kind of hypocrisy and a dichotomy, which is an internal stress. Those who cannot laugh at themselves leave the job for others. Or as Thomas Sydenham, the famous pathologist, said, the arrival of a clown exercises more beneficial influence upon the health of a town than 20 asses laden with drugs. And this was written in 1860. I'm not sure which kind of asses he was speaking about. It could have been. In those days, the drugs are even more toxic than the ones we give today, oftentimes. So what about exercise? I tried to use again, a proactive approach on exercise with patients. Any good exercise program has the 4 components you see listed on the left: cardiovascular or aerobic, strengthening, flexibility, and balance. And in my view, the older you get, the more you need to emphasize flexibility and balance. And these are the kinds of exercises that you can do. So cardiovascular is a kind of ING things: walking, swimming, cycling, running. weight strengthenings, weights and resistance. I'm sure you're familiar with the literature that just showed people in nursing homes just 8 weeks of doing some weightlifting, they tripled their muscle strength, tripled it. And as muscle mass declines with aging, it's so important to offset that with some kind of resistance training. The most important muscles to strengthen are the quadricep muscles, because that prevents falls, improves patients' balance, gives them a chance to walk, and that can be done with very little resistant training. Flexibility, things like Tai Chi or yoga or Pilates, other stretching exercises. Again, as people get stiff from inactivity, or maybe they have pain, so they limit their range of motion, they get stiffer. And then their boundaries of activity narrow. Instead of having a wider range of physical movement, it gets narrower and narrower. And then if they do fall, because they're not flexible, they're more likely to tear or break something. And then balance. And I'm going to show you some literature on Tai Chi here in a moment. Write down on your paper, starting from top to bottom, the word free. F-R-E-E. Now this is what I write. I use my table paper in my exam room as my chalkboard, and I write this down on the patient's table paper, and I'll say, okay, let's talk about exercise. And they go, oh no, well, here we go. So people come in and try and talk to me about losing weight. I don't ask them about their diet. The first thing I say, tell me about your exercise program. And they kind of sink, you know, oh, okay. So tell me, F is for fun, okay? We're talking about exercise component as a lifestyle, and we want you to enjoy it. Now, it's true that the first couple of weeks of any new exercise program may not be fun. That's why I tell them to follow my old grandfather's Polish proverb. Start off slow, then ease off. Because if you overdo yourself, if you overdo yourself, you'll strain something and then you won't be able to do anything for 3 months, okay? So start off slow, then ease off. But then I ask patients, okay, what is it that you enjoy to do? What is it that you really like? Because this is something that we're not talking about an exercise program, we're talking about your lifestyle. So they'll say, well, I like to walk my dog, and I like to go down by the seawall, and maybe bicycling, or I like to swim. And I just say, well, just mix it up then. Have an array of activities that you know that you can do and that are fun for you. R is for regular. Regular now means exercise most days of the week. The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, have now said, forget Kenneth Cooper's aerobics back in the 70s and 80s 3 times a week for 20 minutes. That's not enough. They say an hour of exercise a day most days of the week, maybe 6 or 7 days a week. I say do it 6, even God rested after 7 days. But take an approach that you don't have to do all your exercise in an hour. We all have busy lives, but you can aggregate it. You can do 10 minutes of walking from your car across campus. You can do 20 minutes, some stretching exercises, maybe a half hour here. So through the day you add up, maybe some gardening or other things like that. You add up to an hour. So I said, if you haven't done any, don't start there. Maybe try and get in 10 minutes and then start blocking that up. But that idea of regular is so very important, and exercise decreases all-cause mortality. So I say, well, what can you do regularly? And let's try and work up to that 1 hour a day. There's different ways to do that. You can have the little pedometers, measure how many steps you take. But the critical thing is the scheduling. You don't forget to eat. You don't forget to go to the bathroom or take a shower, or you have appointments, or you show up at work. I said, often it's really just take your little Palm Pilot or your little notebook that you keep your calendar and put it in there, okay? That Thursday morning I go to the gym, Tuesdays I go to yoga, you know, or Friday afternoon I'm going to play tennis, and maybe it's going to change some every week, but unless you block it out, what happens? It gets pushed out, okay? It gets pushed out. the tyranny of the urgent. So that's F, fun, R, regular. E is easy. Easy. Why is easy important? Because we resist doing exercise, particularly if it's something new. So if you're a single mother and you've got to buy a $300 gym membership and get child care for your kids and drive across town, it's not going to happen very easily, okay? So find things that either you can do close to work or in your home or within the context of your life that have the lowest hurdle, that you're not going to stumble and just say, oh, I don't think I'm going to do that. One way many people do this, Michelle has a friend that she walks with a couple days a week. And both of them would probably just sleep. Well, she wouldn't. She gets up at 4 o'clock. But if you have somebody to meet, okay, that actually makes it easier because you feel like a little bit of accountability towards each other as opposed to going out running or walking or whatever by yourself. So make it easy. And the final E is for excellence. Excellence is you exercise not just because the doctor told you or you should do it, but you actually feel better. You feel better. And this is kind of what people talk about, this endorphin release or the runner's high or the decrease in stress that you experience. But people that exercise regularly know that if they miss a few days, they don't feel as good. So I do Tai Chi every morning, for example, for about 20 or 30 minutes. If I miss it a day or so, that's okay. But if it's 2 or 3 days, I start to kind of notice I'm not at my best. So you do it really because you know it will help keep you at your best. Now, speaking of Tai Chi, you've all been sitting too long listening to people talking, so let's stand up. Okay, we're going to do a little Tai Chi practice here. Okay, now those of you out in the hinterland, stand up, please. I see you sitting. You with the red sweater and the khaki pants next to the blue scrub suit. Yeah, we got you. We got you. Come on, she looks like she could get up too. All right, good job. Okay, so the first thing with Tai Chi, let's just kind of do a little stretch of our waists, okay? So drop your, all right, thank you, Helen. Just drop your knees a little bit, just flex them. Keep your arms loose, and then just twist at the waist slowly, slowly.
Right in front of the screen.
Oh, where am I supposed?
Move over.
Oh, there we go. Ah, okay. Very good. Just like this. Okay. Now do it just a little bit where you're kind of like a Raggedy Ann doll. If you're doing this right, your back of your hand will slap your buttock on the opposite side. Don't slap your neighbor, please, because you might get slapped. Okay. Just like that. Just a little stretch. Keep your knees bent. All right. Now, we'll stop that and we'll just try to do something called upwards and downwards. Bend your knees, let your hands hang, and as you take a deep breath in, float up like a lava lamp. As you exhale, bring your hands back to your shoulders and sink. Okay? Inhale, exhale. And Tai Chi is done like this, very slow, coordinated with the breathing. And it's very, very nice kind of relaxation exercise that helps with balance, with mental clarity and strengthening of the legs, and of course flexibility. We have a very nice Tai Chi class here at UTMB, and Charles starts with chair Tai Chi. So patients, even that are very feeble, can sit and do some of these exercises. Okay, relax. Now I'm going to do another one with you called shooting star palm. Okay, just watch me a couple times here. You stand with your palms laying kind of facing forward. Shift your weight to your right foot, and then springing out of your right foot, reach as far across as you can and bring your arm down in a circle. Then repeat that from the other side. It's called a shooting star palm because you imagine your hand is shooting out of your heel, reaching across, coming down in a big circle. So you inhale, and then exhale as you reach. Inhale as it swoops down. Exhale. So you're reaching from one side across the other, as far as you can. You feel what a nice stretch this is for the back, the shoulders, the legs. Very simple, but very relaxing. This Tai Chi, this is called shooting star palm. Do it a few more times. Come back to a rest. All right. Now, we have to finish by doing a proper bow. So you make the yin hand your left hand. Your right hand is what we call an open fist. You don't make a clenched fist. You kind of leave the fingers open. So this is yang, the male element, the receptive female element. You bow forward like this. So grasshopper, very good, very good. Thank you. And so you can all sit down. Now these are kinds of simple things that you can do in your day-to-day life. So you're sitting at the computer for a while and you really start to feel a lot of tension in your shoulders, okay? You get up and do this. You know, it's okay to close your door. Of course, my staff knows I do this stuff all the time, doesn't bother. And you can roll your shoulders like this in a circle. This is a very nice stretch. Just rotate them in a big circle, then go back the other way. Michelle's got a bunch of little exercises of yoga that she does, just day-to-day stuff. You know, like you're standing in line in the grocery store. I've got to teach you one more before we quit. Stand up again. Sorry. Stand up again. This is a good one. This one is really strengthens the legs. This is called arrow and bow. I'm going to turn sideways so you see how it looks. Actually, it looks like this guy right here, except he's older than I am. So, okay. So arrow and bow is you put your back foot kind of at a 45-degree angle, and let's put your right foot forward straight ahead, about shoulder width apart. Now as you inhale, you shift your weight to your back leg, and as you exhale, you come forward. Okay? Inhale, exhale. Now your spine should be straight. Imagine your spine is straight as if it were suspended from a string from the ceiling that starts from the top of your scalp. And this is called arrow and bow. And the reason it's called that is imagine I'm drawing back a bowstring to release an arrow. Now this is an exercise I use a lot with seniors, particularly if they've had hip or knee or ankle problems, because it helps them strengthen those all-important quadriceps muscles, and also they develop what we call proprioception, that is that awareness of where your body is in space. So you try and go nice and level. Helen, you're doing good, but don't dip. Just kind of keep it level. I use the analogy of a merry-go-round. You know how the horses go up and down and up and down? Well, imagine there's that kind of a rail between your belly button and your spine, and you're just sliding along it. And your center of gravity continues to do that. Now just switch to the other side. Put the right foot at 45 degrees and the left foot forward. Everything is always balanced in Tai Chi, so you do one side the same as the other. Breathe in. And when I say breathe in, we're breathing down to our belly, down below the belly button. This is called the Tan Tien, or heavenly center point. And basically this is a deep diaphragmatic breathing. But what you're doing is you're breathing to where your center of gravity is. And you'll find that this kind of exercise, you do this a few dozen times a day. Even if you're a senior, you start to notice the stretching in your Achilles tendon. You notice how your back becomes more flexible, and your hips, your knees, and your quadriceps. One of the things I've been most excited about teaching Tai Chi, okay, we'll do a quick bow again. Let's see how well you got that. All right. Very good. Good class. Thank you. One of the things that you can all sit down. I know that was exhausting. See several people here panting, checking their heart rate. Tai Chi actually does have a cardiovascular and aerobic fitness capacity for reasons we're not quite clear of, but I think it has to do with sympathetic downregulation, relaxation of the blood vessels, and improved cardiac output through relaxation rather than just running the heart rate up all the time. But one of the ways I like to do the Tai Chi training is in the swimming pool. This is very popular. We did this out in Hawaii because you notice the movements are just very slow and kind of circular and just smooth. Well, if you do it in a swimming pool, like when we were doing this one, imagine how that would feel. It just kind of float down and it comes up in the resistance of the water. And like water aerobics, if you do have knee problems, arthritis, the water gives you buoyancy, and then you can kind of get into this more natural flow very easily. So that's something, if you don't have at your hospital or clinic area, you should investigate getting a Tai Chi teacher to teach your seniors, because it's very, very helpful. It reduces fear of falls, which you know is as bad sometimes as falling. For the reasons I mentioned, people that are afraid of falling will often then resist activity. Improve flexibility and balance, strength, stress management, aerobic capacity. And these are articles by Wolfson and Wolf in Journal of the American Geriatric Society some years back. I mentioned the cardiovascular function. They looked at respiratory function, flexibility among geriatric Tai Chi Chuan practitioners. When Michelle and I traveled to the Orient, it's always amazing. You go to the park in Hong Kong or Shanghai, and you don't see a bunch of young people running. What you do is you see a bunch of old people in groups doing these exercises, and they look good and they're like happy. So this is a really helpful ancient exercise that comes out of the Oriental tradition. That's Tai Chi. Tai Chi means the great force. The great force. It's actually a very effective martial art in the soft art model, like Aikido or Jiu-Jitsu, where you use other people's force. But I haven't used it in a fight since I've been old enough to know better. But I find it's very balancing. How about yoga? Yoga is so popular. I've had several friends from New York City say that every other person they see on the street in New York City now is carrying a yoga mat. And why are people going to yoga? Well, one is kind of for the same reason with Tai Chi, that it's a whole system of exercise that not only builds up your strength and flexibility, but there's this mental aspect. Our lives are very busy, and it's clear that high cortisol, high stress damages brain cells and accelerates dementia and the aging brain. So people are very popular. Yoga is very popular because of that reason. People really want to have some time of stress management in their day-to-day life. And so we have yoga classes. In fact, I went to one this morning at our field house every morning, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning from 7 to 8, and Sundays at 9:15. There's free yoga classes. We also have at our field house, if you belong. If you're a senior, we have free yoga classes. I think they're $1. I think 2 days a week over in the PCP building, taught by the same lady who teaches them at the field house, Kathleen DiNatale. So I recommend yoga for those people that don't like Tai Chi. You know, I kind of say, well, try which one you would prefer. But yoga has some of the same benefits of improved breathing capacity, stress reduction, flexibility, cardiovascular health. And you don't have to have any involvement in kind of the original religious traditions of yoga. I've noticed that some patients that have very strong religious beliefs sometimes feel like these Oriental things might have some kind of bad mojo with them because they're out of a different religious tradition. I look at them as purely an exercise capacity with a meditative and relaxation component. If you want to adopt some of the other beliefs that are with that, that's entirely voluntary. But there's a lot of literature here on the effect of yoga on physiological changes in women. Dean Ornish's program on reversing heart disease, you read that right, reversing heart disease, and he has a major grant from Medicare now, which normally doesn't fund studies, in terms of bypassing the bypass procedure. He's taking patients who would be slated for bypass, he puts them on an exercise program, mainly yoga. They practice a very low-fat diet, primarily vegetarian diet with less than 10%. And one of the things that's interesting is his book, Love as Survival, describes this. They practice forgiveness. And this idea that people with heart problems often have unforgiven aspects, so they deal with relationships and group context, and they found a substantial decrease in cardiovascular symptoms in these patients over a short period of time, and have even measured decreased or increased opening of the coronary vessels on repeat angiography, so that it's actually reversed the blockages in the heart. And yoga is part of an overall program that he's doing. Of course, so there's other things like socialization, improving your meditation, treating pain. There's even been published in the Journal of the American Medical Association the use of yoga for carpal tunnel syndrome. So I want to finish up talking a bit about diet and lifestyles. There's so much information, misinformation about diet that I think it's important to get some basics. Clearly, fiber. We all know fiber is important. I just think of one comedian who was on so much fiber he said he's passing rattan furniture. But you probably can overdo it. But it's clear that our society, we're losing the world poop off in terms of the amount of fiber in our diet. We pass slinky sinkers instead of fluffy floaters. And that's because the American diet actually has such low fiber in it that our stools sink instead of floating. And in most of society where there's more raw vegetables and fruits in their diet, all that roughage helps prevent colon cancer, diverticular disease, along with all the coronary and neoplastic things. But the stool tends to be much bulkier as a result. So we, as Americans, hate to get behind in any area, but the great international poop-off is coming. So vegetables, whole grains, the anti-inflammatory diet I'll talk about, the good fats, and one of the most under-prescribed things in medicine is water. And this is often very important, as you know, for your seniors who have lost some of their natural thirst for water, and you just have to prescribe it like you do medicine. I say take 2 glasses of water 4 times a day. You know, just like you take your Norvasc or your Lipitor or whatever. There's been a lot of literature, as you know, about the role of inflammation in coronary disease and other illnesses. The process is this. Free radicals are caused by certain stresses on our system, the way we eat, etc., cause inflammation, causing tissue damage. What's a free radical? Basically, it's an electron that has excess binding capacity. And I heard this described in a way I thought was really nice. Imagine a high school gymnasium filled with mouse traps. And on each mouse trap, and the mouse trap are sprung back, there's a ping pong ball. Okay? So you got like 300 of these things out there. The free radical, you're standing up in the bleachers, the extra ping pong ball. You throw it out there, and all of a sudden, all this chain reaction starts. And that's what happens in terms of oxidative stress in the body. You have this progressive damage that occurs from that chain reaction. There is such a thing as excess of physical activity being harmful. Oxidative stress does occur with physical activity, and Kenneth Cooper has talked about and showed pictures of many of his friends who were ultra-marathon runners that died early of heart disease or arrhythmias. You look at people like Lance Armstrong, super athletes, and they have trained and overtrained to the extent where their DNA can damage repair system has been overburdened and they can get neoplasms. So there is a risk of overactivity with physical activity, but that is rare in our society. We're usually on the other side of it. But fruits and vegetables are very powerful antioxidants. I don't particularly stress the vitamin antioxidants, although I take them and I recommend them to my patients. I say the first foundation of a healthy diet is eating more fruits and vegetables. Actually the current recommendations are between 9 and 11 servings of fruits and vegetables. And these servings are not big servings. I mean, it's like a half a cup of fruit, or a medium apple is a serving. So these are the inflammatory conditions we know that can be aggravated by an improper diet: coronary artery disease, atherothrombotic disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and even arthritis. And what's an anti-inflammatory diet? I'll go briefly over a little bit of biochemistry, but it's a diet that is higher in omega-3 fatty acids as opposed to omega-6 fatty acids. And these are diets that have more fish, fish oil, flaxseed oil. Fish, the kinds of fish that are high in omega-3s are salmon, sardines, anchovies, halibut, Tuna, also I left tuna off. Nuts, 1 handful of nuts a week, like walnuts, soy, pecans, can reduce your cardiovascular risk by as much as 50%. Red meat and other saturated animal fats, some of the dairy and trans fatty acids that come from fried foods need to be reduced to decrease the burden on the diet. And even places like McDonald's now are looking at reducing the trans fatty acids. And food labeling now requires trans fatty acid labeling. Trans fatty acid is bad. The American Heart Association has gone so far as to say that healthy individuals should take 2 servings of fish weekly, and along with flaxseed, canola, and soybean oil. Now, there is some concern now about the fish supply in terms of toxic accumulation of mercury and other chemicals. And particularly for women that are pregnant and children, they probably should limit their fish to once a week or even less. But you can also take the fish oil, which is distilled and doesn't have those products in them, and get equal benefit. And some of the bigger fish, the ones that are older living, higher on the food chain, like tuna, tend to concentrate some of those things like mercury. So that you do have to be careful with them. One of the safest tunas is actually the white albacore tuna that just comes in the can, as opposed to the sushi grade tuna, which I love so much, that you get in and I've kind of given up swordfish for this reason. I like swordfish. Salmon, if you're going to have salmon, you should try to get Alaskan salmon, Pacific salmon, rather than farmed or Atlantic salmon. Most of the times the restaurants, they either don't know, but you can find out with some inquiry and maybe order something else. But salmon is a very good addition. Patients with heart disease should actually increase the doses of these essential fatty acids, icosapentaenoic acid and docosahexaenoic acid, by taking fish oil supplementation. How much? It's just 1 to 2 grams a day, which is basically 2 capsules of the fish oil. You can get it at any health food store or pharmacy. The other piece is increasing complex carbohydrates, and I'll show you some data on that. High in fiber, they lower the hypoglycemic load, the glycemic load, and reduces the risk of coronary heart disease. The types of fats you're familiar with: saturated, beef and animal fats, monounsaturated, which are very healthy fats, the omega-9. The omega just refers to the occurrence of the first double bond from the end of the molecule. So if it's the 9th position, it's omega-9. Omega-3 is the 3rd position, and omega-6. And then the polyunsaturated fats, which are these. It's believed that the ratio of our omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids in the American diet is way off. It should be something like 4 to 1, 4 omega-6 to 1 omega-3, but instead it's kind of like 25 to 1. And what this does is it creates a stimulation of the inflammatory cascade, which we think has a cofactor, at least, in cancer and heart disease. So this is where I tell patients, I said, let's try increasing the omega-3s in your diet. Where do you get them from? Legumes like beans, leafy vegetables, flaxseed and canola oil. Say, I couldn't get my wife to donate any breast milk, but that's the way it goes. But this docosahexaenoic acid, very high in breast milk, and it's very healthy for babies. So they don't get that. They actually start off their life with a disadvantage in terms of their coronary risk. And omega-6 is not necessarily bad, but the source of the omega-6 can be healthier, such as in seeds and nuts, versus the meat and dairy products, which create this most inflammatory molecule called arachidonic acid. Just a long story short on this one. This is an example of how omega-3 fatty acids are helpful. There's a study by Thies reported in The Lancet last year on in Scandinavia. Now, Scandinavia has a socialized medicine system, so people that have a procedure schedule, like Canada does or whatever, they a lot of times have to wait quite a little while for it. And so these people had blockages of their carotid arteries, and they were scheduled for an endarterectomy, which is a removal of the plaque. And what they did is they broke them into groups. They gave one group fish oil, They gave another group a placebo, like it was sunflower oil. And what they found is that at the end of only 6 weeks of this, when they went to surgery, that the patient's plaques that were on the fish oil group had higher levels of these essential fatty acids, the DHA and EPA, but they were also very different. They had smoothed over, they were thicker, and they didn't have inflammatory blood cells underneath. So within 6 weeks, they still had the plaques, but the plaque was much less likely to cause a clot or to rupture, which is why we've moved from the term atherosclerosis to atherothrombosis. It's that it's not the necessarily mechanical blockage of an artery that kills you. It's when that clot ruptures, or that plaque ruptures, and you get a big clot, and then that really blocks it off. So even with patients that have atherosclerosis, I put them on, or they're diabetic, they have hypertension, they have coronary artery disease, high cholesterol, I put them on this fish oil because it helps reverse the negative types of plaques in their bodies. And this is just a real quick biochemistry slide. This is the omega-3 pathway, and basically creates less inflammatory mediators of less inflammatory leukotrienes and prostaglandins than these high omega-6, which create arachidonic acid. You see cyclooxygenase here, this COX-2 inhibitors, the COX-1 inhibitors. We spend a lot of our time inhibiting this inflammatory cascade with aspirin, with COX-2s, COX-1s, etc. And so why don't we start upstream by reducing the load? Just a few quick slides here. You've got these in your handout. Clearly there's evidence for antioxidants in cancer prevention, reduction of colon cancer and other cancers with cruciferous vegetables. These are like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. So when I have a patient who comes back from colonoscopy with some little polyps, I put them on broccoli. I put them on a high fiber diet. I put them on folic acid, which for some reason we think reduces the risk of colon cancer, and maybe an aspirin a day. Green leafy vegetables, fruits, nuts, legumes, soy, garlic, omega-3, all of these, there's evidence for reduction of cancer through antioxidant and anti-inflammatory mechanism. Prostate cancer risk can be reduced with tomato products. Selenium has reduced esophageal cancer in Chinese patients. This is one reason that in our overfed society, where the greatest risk is not starvation, it's obesity, that people sometimes need to have supplements. Because in China, what they found is that the soil could grow rice just fine without selenium, but people don't grow well without selenium. And so when they started giving the selenium to them, their reduction in esophageal cancer, which was very rare but highly prevalent in this province, went down dramatically. Vitamin E reduces prostate cancer incidence and mortality, and we're doing a study at UTMB on the selenium and vitamin E. People are always asking me if they should stop their vitamin E now after that Hopkins study last couple of weeks, where there was 36 patients out of 10,000 that had an increased risk of coronary disease. I said, I don't think so, but what you should do is not take the kind of vitamin E that people normally take, because that's not how it occurs in society. You should take, instead of the DL alpha, which is kind of the generic type of thing that they tested, you should take the mixed or natural tocopherols and tocotrienes that come with a gamma tocopherol in them. So the mixed or natural vitamin E at the doses of 200 to 400 units, because that's the way you get vitamin E in food, in selenium, nuts, and so forth. I mean, in nuts and sunflower seeds and such. Just giving diabetics one multivitamin a day reduces infections. But giving it to elderly along with vitamin E did not seem to decrease upper respiratory incidence. But diabetics, as you know, are prone to nutritional deficiencies. Cereal fiber lowers the risk of coronary disease. Only 2 slices of whole grain bread made a difference. You should look at your bread. If it's less than 3 grams of fiber per slice, throw it away or put it back on the shelf. Look at it. Look at the label. Most white bread has almost none. It's been milled out. That's why the flour is there. So you should go to whole grain breads, Ezekiel bread, whole grain breads that have at least 3 grams of fiber, and it may supplement for detrimental foods as well. Just what Grandma always said, eat your veggies, whole grains, adequate omega-3s, physical activity, avoidance of smoking, maintenance of body weight, and avoiding trans fatty acids. This was published in JAMA about 2 years ago, Optimal Diets for Prevention of Coronary Artery Disease. So what should we eat? 7 to 9, I'm revising that to say 9 to 11 or more servings of fruits and vegetables. Color. The more colors on your plate, the more carotenoids and other antioxidants that are there. My wife makes a wonderful meal called Farmer's Chicken, and she's got red peppers and green peppers and orange peppers and pimentos and capers and mushrooms and olives, and they look at it, it looks like a rainbow, but that's actually a healthy way to eat. If you look at your plate and it's kind of monochromatic, kind of brown or white, it's probably not very healthy. So multivitamin daily, fish once or twice a week, and then consider supplements like folic acid, fish, or flaxseed oil for high-risk groups. I'm going to kind of close up here with this book that I'm very enthused about. I met the author in Hawaii recently. He's an ophthalmologist. The book is called Superfoods by Stephen Pratt. 14 foods that will change your life. And as you know, there's a lot of medical terrorism around food. You know, like don't eat this, don't eat that. You know, if you enjoy it, you probably don't want to eat it anyways. You know, so anyway, he actually has looked at the literature and said there's really a group of foods that we know are healthy and they're really good for you. So this book not only has a listing of those, which are these foods, but also what he calls sidekicks. Each one of these foods has other foods within the group. So blueberries, they also have cranberries and blackberries, or pumpkins, got sweet potatoes, carrots, oats, other whole grains, etc. But he's also he hired a chef from a 5-star resort in California to come up with recipes that are wonderful for this. So last week I made this wonderful cucumber yogurt dill dressing for my salmon. It was just so very, very tasty. Unfortunately, the salmon was spoiled. I had to throw it out, but I ate the dressing anyways. Darn it, Randall's. Anyway, so this is really a very positive book. And if you look at the food here, these foods all have the evidence of good science behind them for prevention of the major afflictions in our society, which are cardiovascular disease and cancer. So these are ones and that's not in your handout, so if you want to copy those down, you can.
Could you repeat the author's name?
It's Stephen Pratt, P-R-A-T-T, and the book is called Superfoods RX. I really recommend it. This is becoming a bestseller, and he was on Oprah with this recently. He also included foods at Oprah's suggestion that you shouldn't eat, but I won't include those here. So here's a diet pyramid based on a foundation of whole grains, more fruits and vegetables. This is where I tell my patients to increase their diet, right here. So this is the area that's usually sadly lacking, more fruits and vegetables in diet, and that suddenly cuts down their fat content, their high glycemic load from some of the pastas and other whole grain, grains, bread, cereals, etc. that we have. I'm going to skip over the nutrigenomics section. You can look at that on your own because I'm running kind of short on time. But basically, this is a peek into the future, is how nutrition impacts gene expression and alters gene structure and influences health. And it's clear from what we're learning about the human genome that food affects you at a molecular and genomic level. And this is the way that it can be preservative to your long-term health. And those are just some examples. There's a nice website at UC Davis that will connect you with this if you want to read more about it. This is me giving acupuncture to a patient of mine with irritable bowel syndrome. And what do I recommend? High potency B complex daily, 500 milligrams of vitamin C twice a day. The mixed tocopherols is a vitamin E, garlic, red wine, olive oil, green tea, fish oil, flaxseed oil, and saying grace, being thankful for your food. Just stopping for a moment and pausing instead of mindlessly just kind of eating on the way to something else improves digestion. I think the idea of grace probably started, people were kind of praying they didn't get salmonella or something like that from what they were going to eat. But now, just taking a moment to be thankful. Back to the gratitude piece. The Mediterranean diet pyramid, people believe this is probably our healthiest diet right now on the planet, is the Mediterranean diet. Why? Because it has lots of whole grains, fruits and vegetables and fish, olive oil, good mix of good fats, low mix of bad fats. And these are just some of the other therapies I'll often use in the elderly as herbal approaches for prostate, for memory. Horse chestnut I use a lot for varicose veins and hemorrhoids, very helpful. Glucosamine for arthritis. Chromium for diabetes or pre-diabetic patients. CoQ10 I recommend for all my patients that are on lipid-lowering agents because they decrease the level of this essential enzyme which keeps the mitochondria functioning and leads to increased risk of the side effects, muscle aches, liver problems and such. And zinc for wound healing and prostate. The mind-body was well addressed by my previous co-presenter here. Journaling, volunteerism, relaxation, creativity. And then there's a list of references I give to you. More mistakes in medicine are made by those who do not care than those who do not know. So we're coming full circle. You do need to know, but first you need to care. And if you want to learn more in this area, it's a wonderful book here, soon to be bestseller. Available at the bookstore, Barnes & Noble. This is a really nice mix of both conventional and integrative medicine. This is an excellent guide. I helped cooperate on producing this guide to herbs by the American Botanical Council, a nonprofit out of Austin. And then some natural medicines comprehensive database that we keep here in our UTMB library if you want to look up any of the natural products. And these are all available. Health Notes Online, also available through our UTMB library. So I'm going to end there, and that's our website if you want more information on any of the alternative or integrative strategies for healthy aging or any other questions you may have. So So I ran over a little bit, but I'm going to don my reindeer.
10 minutes is open for some questions and discussion. Anybody has something they'd like to share? Okay.
I just have a question.
What's your name?
Tia McCurdy
Oh, okay.
from the Senior Services.
Okay.
Have you seen any evidence of
any relationship between chromium pencolinate and antioxidants that cause cancer?
Is there, I'm not sure I understand the question. Does chromium with antioxidants increase cancer risk? I'm not familiar with it. What do you know about
Well,
Sorry, about 10 years ago, I think is what she's talking about. Chromium picolinate had a bad rap. I forget what it was for, but just because you had chromium,
Yeah.
just pure chromium. I think that's what you're
Oh, that's the
chromium.
difference?
The bad rap about it that I know is, first of all, it's over-marketed as a weight loss aid, okay, which I don't think there's really any evidence that. In some people, it does help improve carbohydrate
yeah.
metabolism. And even in diabetics, it can help reduce their hemoglobin A1C if used properly. But chromium in itself is a normal part of the human diet. It's a required coenzyme, as many of these trace minerals are, it's a required cofactor in enzyme reactions. And so I don't know of anything about it with this, with the concept of antioxidants and synergy. I could look it up very easily, but And the way I would do that, I think,
What are
are
the
we on?
differences between the chromium and chromium picolinate?
It's just, the picolinate is just, it's just the organic acid that it's attached to. You couldn't absorb straight chromium. It'd be like going licking your fender or your bumper on your car. You wouldn't get anything out of it. So they have to attach it to a organic salt, and that's usually what it is. So I don't know if this is okay. I'm going to just kind of wander over to the UTMB website while I'm doing this, but other questions? Okay, yes ma'am. Susan?
Sealy Center on Aging here. And you had a slide that said coenzyme Q10 is recommended for people with gingivitis.
Yeah.
How is that helpful?
Well, what you do with coenzyme Q10 for gingivitis, again, remember it is most useful in highly active metabolic tissue, and the gums are one of those areas. So it acts as an antioxidant. So if you have a patient with chronic inflammation of the gums, what I do is have them chew the gel caps of that and swish it around in their mouth rather than just swallowing it, and that gets a better relief for it. I'm going to just give you an online demonstration to answer your question. To go to our CAM, our Integrative Medicine website, you just go through the UTMB server and you put CAM in for Complementary Alternative Medicine. We have a number of links. This list over here are licensed databases about that you can only get into the UTMB server. These other ones you can use elsewhere. So there's a couple here. I go to Health Notes Online, for example, and I could look under vitamin guide, which would be where chromium would show up. It's not really a vitamin, but it's not an herb, so they break it into either dietary supplements by vitamins or herbs. And just let's look down here and see, are there any hazards with it? Side effects or interactions. Has not been found to cause toxicity. While there are a few reports of people developing medical problems taking chromium cause and effect relationship, was not proven. One study showed in high concentrations in a test tube it could cause chromosomal mutations in ovarian cells of hamsters. I don't know if that was the thing you were talking about. It can be altered by antioxidants to form a substance that could cause free radical damage and could increase the risk of cancer. See, I learned something. I just looked it up. So that's the way you could look it up. And patients come to me with questions like that every day that you could have. The Natural Medicines Comprehensive Database has a similar search engine, and you could go just put chromium in there. This one is updated every day by look at this, December 9th, by the makers of Pharmacists, by editors of Pharmacist Letter. And so if we want to look up chromium, read detailed information, it's got this on every substance. It's got them by their brand names too. So if you want to look at safety issues probably likely safe, likely safe, likely safe. Okay, so it looks like overall some concern long-term supplemental use may not be safe due to potential mutagenic effects. Until more is known, tell patients not to take chromium supplements long-term. So that's a more conservative position, in my view, than has been documented clinically, but it's a good question, and I'll have to keep that in mind next time I prescribe it for patients long-term. Okay, next question.
My name is Jocelyn Johnson, and I work in the anticoagulation area.
Hi, Jocelyn.
And kind of piggybacking on the same information, a lot of people are given herbal things, and they really potentiate the effects of the Coumadin.
Yep.
So just kind of a note for everybody to kind of keep those things in mind, because I find that a lot of times when they come back to me, they've been on it quite some time. INRs are real high, so
Jocelyn
we
is
can-
making an extremely good point. Very good point. Almost everything interacts with Coumadin. You know, drugs interact with Coumadin. But for example, a patient of mine was taking ginkgo, and then her cardiologist put her on Coumadin for her atrial fib, and she developed GI bleeding. Okay. Now another patient of mine was on on Coumadin for atrial fib, and I had him on CoQ10 because he was on his statins, and CoQ10 has a vitamin K-like effect. So also embedded in this database is very helpful. Back to the health notes, if you go to a safety checker, you can look up by either the supplement or the drug. So let's say we want to look under Coumadin, which is warfarin, and what it will do then is it will show you all of the potential interactions between it and all of the natural substances. Okay? So you got to avoid a lot of stuff. So all of these affect absorption. Like CoQ10 decreases it, which I didn't know. I learned actually from you. You told that patient to stop the CoQ10, and I go, I never heard of that, and then here it is. Iron, green tea, magnesium, St. John's wort, vitamin C, zinc, all affect absorption. And then all of these herbs have an effect potentially on clotting. They're actually anti-clotting. So you take garlic or ginger or ginkgo, and it might affect platelet function. And for patients on Coumadin too, that might make it go too high. This group may make it go too low. So this is a good thing to always inquire if your patients are on Coumadin, if they're on any substances, just to look. And it's not everything, but there's a lot of stuff. Okay, thanks for bringing that up.
Any other comments?
Okay, thank you so much. Happy holidays. I'm Vixen, in case you were wondering.
Not over yet.
We're going to close with a song? Very cool.
This is just too much. I really want to thank Dick and Michelle for coming by today. It's just been great having them. And a lot of good useful information. Like I said, this video tape, so we can go pass the word around. But
Tony, you need to move in front of the thing so I can see you. Can we print that?
I don't know. That's all right. We're okay.
You want the
It's
microphone?
real quick, but it's really just, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings in it to you and your kin. Good tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year. Fill out the valuation form, fill out the valuation form, fill out the valuation form.